Hey guys, this week we are going to be looking at food webs. Last week we looked at abiotic and biotic factors, which is living and non-living. This week we're going to look at the difference between food webs and food chains, what creates a food web, what creates a food chain.
Deb Kirby, please call the front office, please. Deb Kirby, please call the front office.
Some essential questions is how can you diagram the energy flow through a living system? And how would you describe food webs in different ecosystems? So energy in a living system is that all living things need energy. Energy made by plants through photosynthesis that we've talked about in the past is transferred to an animal that eats it. So when photosynthesis happens, it gives the plant sugar to have and grow, and energy stored in that plant. When we eat it, that energy is transferred to us. So that animal then transfers that energy to the next animal which eats it, and so on and so on. So each time an organism is consumed, that energy is transferred. Not the same amount, but it's transferred. So food chains are a single pathway in which energy and nutrients are passed from one living thing to another, one living organism to another. Energy is used up as it moves through the food chain. The arrow represents the energy being transferred. So if you can see, you start with the sun, then it goes to the plant, and then to the grasshopper, and then to the frog, and then to the eagle. These arrows in that direction, even though that's saying, the plant consumes the sun's energy, the grasshopper consumes the plant's energy, it also is showing that transfer of energy. The sun's energy is transferred to the plant, the plant's energy is transferred to the grasshopper, and so on. But this is a food chain. It's one single link. It's probably the same things that you all seen in elementary school that were simple. Food webs are a network of food chains, so it's more than one food chain put together by which energy and nutrients are passed on from one living organism to another. It's multiple pathways. The arrows represent the energy being transferred. Energy is the greatest at the bottom of the food web. So an example of a food web over here on your right is at the bottom. It starts with your marsh grass and your cattails. That energy is then transferred to crickets and to grasshoppers. Then the grasshopper's energy is transferred to the shrew. Then the cricket's energy could be transferred to the frog or the shrew. And then the shrew's energy could be transferred to the hawk or the snake. And the frog's energy is transferred to the snake. So these are many food chains connected. Because if you just had the one food chain, it could be marsh, grass, grasshopper, shrew, hawk. Whereas this showed like different ways that crickets are consumed through the shrew and the frog, and different ways the shrew's consumed. So it's multiple food chains. So the energy pyramid is a graphical model of energy flow in a community. So if we look, our producers are on the bottom. Producers are those that produce their own food, such as plants and other organisms that create photosynthesis or create their own food. So energy that its lowest, if you look at the arrow, is at the top, whereas the population smallest is at the top. So on the left hand side of the triangle, it shows the energy. It goes from high to low. On the right hand side, it goes from large to small. So producers are very high in energy, and there's a large amount of plants out in the world. Primary consumers, it gets smaller. These are the herbivores that eat just plants and their energy is getting lower. Population is getting smaller. Then we move up to secondary consumers, which consume the primary consumers. These are your carnivores. Their energy is getting lower. Their population is getting smaller. And then we finally make it to the top where the tertiary consumers are. These are animals that can pretty much eat about anything. They're very low in energy, so it takes a lot of this to get their energy they need throughout the day, and also the population is smaller. Because if you think about humans being a tertiary consumer, we have a lot more plants than people in this world. And so we need a lot of food throughout the day, a lot of calories throughout the day to burn in our normal activity level. Whereas producers don't need as much energy because they reserve a lot of their energy where they don't move. So vocabulary, producers make their own food, their plants, and the fruit and vegetables and stuff that we eat are the produced product of a plant. Consumers get energy from eating other organisms. So consumers, all the consumers, get their energy from eating living things, whether it's just plants, herbivores, or carnivores, which are meat eaters. Decomposers recycle dead organisms into chemical nutrients used in soil, air, and water. So pretty much when an animal dies or gets killed and the remains are left, these decomposers like bacteria, fungi, all of that comes in and breaks that material up and gives that nutrients back to the soil. So it's all recycled. So types of consumers is your herbivores, they only eat plants. Carnivores eat only meat. Omnivores, which is what we are, we eat both plants and meat. And then scavengers, which is what the buzzards and stuff are, which eat bodies of dead organisms. Producers, primary consumers, secondary consumers, and tertiary consumers. Top consumer is called the apex. So we're one of the apex consumers. Producers are your plants, primary consumers are your herbivores, secondary and tertiary is all your carnivores and omnivores both. Top consumers, apex, is your alpha, kind of like alpha males or alpha females. They're us that we eat pretty much anything. Deep ocean food webs. So in the ocean there's different food webs. At the bottom there's no sunlight that reaches the deep ocean floor, but still there is life there. In these extreme environments, energy comes from two places. So just like the upper part of the ocean and the land gets their energy from the sun, these energy comes from two different places at the bottom of the ocean: the cold seeps and the hydrothermal vents. This process is called chemosynthesis. Cold seeps are areas where methane and hydrogen sulfide are released into the ocean. So those elements are released. It's a certain single-celled organism that lives off of these gases. So different little microbe organisms survive off of the hydrogen sulfide and the methane. Clams and mussels and shrimps and crab and bacteria and tube worms eat these microbes for food. So then the things that eat clams and mussels and shrimps and crabs have stuff that they eat the microbes, then something eats them that's bigger, and the chain goes on. Hydrothermal vents, which is water, is heated by the underwater volcanic activity. So under the Earth's crust we have the mantle, and we know that there are fault lines even in the ocean that contribute to this heat, and these are called the hydrothermal vents. hot water spews from the holes in the crust called vents. Microbes turn the chemicals in the hot water into energy. Fish, shrimp, giant tube worms, which is what's pictured on the right hand side, mussels, crabs, and clams live on these microbes. So once again, even in the hydrothermal vents, these elements are released in the hot water and the microbes live on it, and then all of these first consumers eat those microbes. So that is a short little video of food webs. Let's go back to the questions real quick. So how can you diagram the energy flow through a living system? So the energy flow through a living system is always in your producers, or like your plants, is a large amount and a large amount of energy that it starts with. Then as it goes up, we lose some of that energy, mainly 10% of that energy with each level because of our body's temperatures, losing heat, which is also energy during this process. So we only get about, we lose 10% each time that goes up to the level. So you have your producers, which is a lot of energy, and 10% less is your primary consumers, and 10% less is your secondary consumers, and then 10% less is your tertiary and apex consumers. So how would you describe food webs in different ecosystems? So food chains, are just one straight line, like your grass, grasshopper, frog, and then hawk. Food web is multiple food chains put together, like grass might go to the cow and the cricket and the rabbit, and then the cow can go to wolves or bears or us, and then the cricket can go to frogs, frogs and birds, and then those can go to even bigger birds like hawks and eagles and other predators. And so it just builds upon each other. It's more than just one single straight line, a food web is. If you have any questions on your work throughout the week, please give me or Mr. Smith a call or an email, or we can do a Google Meet. We usually do Google Meets on Tuesdays at 11:30. I will update that and put that on the calendar because it might change depending on if we come back to in person or if we stay remote. So just keep checking your emails in Google Classroom. Have a great day.